The Philadelphia 76ers still wait with bated breath regarding what the future of Joel Embiid will be, how long he will be away from the team, and what a potential recovery timeline would look like. But despite this, we do have a window into the mindset of the team and what their expectations are ahead of the deadline, regardless of what the outcome of Joel Embiid is. Now, I do want to put a little asterisk next to this video, as it is dependent on what the official game plan is laid out. That as much as the Sixers want to code it otherwise, there is no doubt that your game plan changes significantly regarding whether or not Joel Embiid can return to this team. But I do want to begin by diving into the exact quote that we do have to work with here. We have from Brian Windhorst on SportsCenter saying, quote, Embiid's injury is not going to affect the way that the Sixers are going to approach the trade deadline. They were already expected to be one of the most active teams leading into next Thursday's deadline. Daryl Morey's got a team that has now lost 4 in a row, this prior to last night's victory. He's under a fair amount of pressure to do something to upgrade this team, regardless of what the MRI shows. So, a couple notes there. For starters, obviously the Joel Embiid news is going to impact things, and for clarity on this, from Woj we have, there's still uncertainty about how the Sixers medical staff, several specialists, and Embiid will move forward to treat the injured meniscus. They'll take more time over the next several days to chart out a course. This coming after the news that Sixers star Joel Embiid has an injured lateral meniscus in his left knee and will be out through the weekend while a treatment plan is finalized. So, to lay out my full case here, if there is any chance that Joel Embiid comes back for the postseason run, you do everything in your power to absolutely give this team a chance at a championship. That as currently constructed and with Joel Embiid on the floor, the Sixers team is not quite a championship contender, but they are in the ballpark and not far off. So if that is the case, and when you have a player like Joel Embiid, who if he can return to the floor, will still immediately be one of the best players in the league, even when he's not playing at full 100%, there is a chance that they can win a title this year. And that fact in itself means that they have to go from it. That there is always the Daryl Morey quote that floats around from a few years ago that said that if you have at least 5% chance at a title, you have to go for it every season because the window is so small in the NBA. And when talking about Joel Embiid specifically, that makes it all the more pressing why they must go for it. That I know what history tells us, that you likely are not going to see a Joel Embiid healthy playoff run. He's yet to do it in his entire career, with the exception of the bubble season in which there was obviously that gap in between for him to get healthy. And by the way, Ben Simmons had a hurt back. Al Horford is on the roster, so it really just does not count all around. But that also means that the window is not going to get wider next season. That as Joel continues to get older, and he's turning 30 this year, there's even less and less of a chance that he's able to stay healthy through the course of a season and through the playoff run. Now, I will front and center say that the Sixers need to take responsibility and begin to manage him in a more effective way than they're currently doing. Forget the MVP race, forget the 65 race, forget all these things, playing back-to-backs, whatever. Make sure that his health is the number one priority. That I respect from Joel that he is trying to break down and break the stereotypes of him not being able to play on a regular basis or having this injury-prone label. Him obviously wanting the individual accolades and wanting to be recognized one of the best in the game, which he clearly is. But it is the Sixers' responsibility to prevent him from doing damage to himself, to put the franchise in the best possible position by ensuring his safety. Now, we have another report this following the announcement of Embiid's injury specifics, not obviously the timeline, but that it is the meniscus issue. And from Brett Siegel of Clutch Points, he writes, quote, Philadelphia is certainly operating as a team that is trying to maximize its championship outlook while also maintaining a level of stability and flexibility entering the offseason. The Sixers are willing to pursue any player they believe will help them capitalize on Joel Embiid's best years. Morey is not one to sit around and let other executives dictate the moves that his franchise can make. So with that being said, I still want to push back on this concept of the cap space plan. And I'll also point out my good friend Trilbro Dude of the You Know Ball podcast calling it the cap space plan, offering cap as in Daryl Morey is lying here. I do hope that is the case, because I just don't see the logic in waiting. That, as I mentioned, I don't see a higher likelihood that Joel Embiid has a healthy playoff run really ever again. And frankly, this is very optimistic thinking, but there is a chance this aligns to give him the best chance of that. That if this is, say, a 6 to 8 week recovery timeline, and there are 10 weeks remaining in the playoffs, or in the regular season until the playoffs, that means Joel gets whatever recovery process he needs done, rests 6 to 8 weeks, and then he returns for the final 2 weeks of the season, ramps up, and goes on a playoff run. That might be the recipe to him having the healthiest playoff run of his career. And if that option is remotely on the table, then you absolutely go for this. And by the way, you can kind of check 2 boxes here. That number one, by getting a win now player and adding, you help this current Sixers team stay afloat right now. That it is no secret how competitive the Eastern Conference is. when looking at that as a whole, that the Sixers have dropped to 5th in the East after this recent slowdown part, that both the Cavs and the Knicks 9-1 in their last 10 games. The Knicks specifically, the hottest team in basketball, winning 8 in a row to this point and playing just some phenomenal hoops. But there is a little gap beyond that. The Pacers have cooled off between their hot start to the beginning of the season. Heat just hovering above 500 and frankly have looked very poor of late. The same record as the Magic there, but some youth on that side. I don't see a world where they slip all the way out of the playoff race, even if that there is not these massive reinforcements coming. But I do think that you should put the team in the best position to at least stay afloat and stay in that top 6 mix. That avoiding the play-in should be the priority, and I think that's an attainable goal. So by trading for a player that can help you reach that, can continue to help you win, you also add some additional ammo for when Joel Embiid returns to the floor. That even when he is fully healthy, I think this team still has some holes. I think they could use a three-point gunner, a guy with a high-volume, high-efficiency three-point shooter to help spread the floor, and that becomes even more important with Joel Embiid out, as you have to make up for 35 points per game, which he has been providing. And then when he returns, that he will be a guy that helps maximize that shooter, a guy to play a role like a JJ Redick, a Seth Curry, a Georges Niang, a shooter to just play off Embiid, capitalizes on the double teams that he commands, and really just knock down shots in a way that there isn't the best option on this team right now. Obviously, Tyrese Maxey's a great shooter. D'Anthony Melton, a very good shooter. But as far as just a guy that is a high-volume gunner from beyond the arc, they don't really have one. So attack that. Add one. That becomes especially crucial right now. And a wing defender. That's another position that needs to be addressed. And also another ball handler. That there's just so much on Tyrese Maxey's shoulder right now. And as well, want to bring in the backup center conversation. That I'm not ready to be confident enough in either B-Ball Paul or Mo Bamba at this point in time. I've seen plenty of whispers and hopes about the return of an Andre Drummond, and that is absolutely a reunion I would welcome. All these issues become the more pressing with Joel Embiid set to miss a certain amount of time. Now, to give a one more preview on the actual amount of time, I'll pull up these surgery options here from Dr. Evan Jeffries. He says, a tough blow for Embiid, but the big question is whether he needs surgery, and if he does, what procedure. The time of healing for a meniscectomy would be a 4 to 6 week time period versus a meniscus repair for a 4 to 6 month period. So if that was to be the case, if he is out for 4 to 6 months and he's not returning this season, obviously that changes things. That you're not winning a championship when your best player, the reigning MVP of the league, is not on the court. That is when I buy into this cap space plan. So Daryl Morey should be at every one of those doctors' meetings as well. That you should be trying to find the answers to these questions because it should dictate their direction. That despite the concept from Brian Whithurst that Embiid's injury is not going to affect the way that they're going to approach the trade deadline, it absolutely should. But from reading the tea leaves, my vibe on the situation, and mind you, this being the 4th time in Joel Embiid's career that he has torn his meniscus, 2 in his right, 2 in his left to this point. I will note this being in the left. He has not done that knee since the 2016-17 season, but the bottom line is he has some legitimate knee issues that aren't going away anytime soon. So and by anytime soon, I mean ever, he's going to have to deal with these, and that's the unfortunate reality. I think that a lot of these issues are pretty chronic and stuff that he's just going to have to figure out how to manage and deal with throughout his career. It's a really unfortunate break, and I feel bad for him on a human being level, but you got to make the most of it. The Sixers have to make the most of it, and that is why they cannot afford to wait if he is returning to play, if he's fighting through this pain and doing everything possible to get back on the floor, which all signs seem to be indicating toward. There obviously will be a more concrete plan coming out likely this weekend based on what his timeline is and what this means for the Sixers. But if there is a 1% chance of him working to return, you owe it to that guy to build up this roster, to get a win-now piece. And this also paints a potential different option where you can kind of try guys out in a way that you would not be the case if Joel Embiid was active for the remainder of the season. That, for example, a guy that might be on an expiring contract, say a DeMar DeRozan. If you think DeMar might help but aren't sure, you can kind of take a trial run, and then you're not committed to the re-signing him in free agency. You can let him walk in a way. You're going to get guys cleaner opportunities to not see how they fit next to Joel, but truly identify them as basketball players. And there is value in that as well. So the worst case scenario here is absolutely that Daryl Morey sits on his hands, attacks the buyout market, and does not do much to help this team. That would be an absolute mistake at this point in the game. It does seem like they are trending away from that direction, which I am relieved to hear, but I need to hear some rumors. I need some actions. I need some trades. I need this deadline to come to motivate some teams to be sellers, be buyers, and ultimately the Sixers have to be at the forefront of all of that. So for now, we will continue to send our prayers in Joel Embiid's direction. I will note that over on Pick Swap Media, I will be doing an interview with a physical therapist and doctor to discuss a little bit more in depth the potential plans for Joel Embiid and what that means. So you guys can feel free to check that out as well. But I'll be back breaking down things right here on Sixers Digest as well, talking about all the different options for ahead of the trade deadline, as well as what the eventual news will be on what Embiid's timeline is. So once again, send some prayers for the big fella. Shout out to Tyrese Maxey for keeping this team afloat with his 51-point game last night. Got a video out on that already. And make sure you guys are subscribing to the channel. Appreciate it very much. Drop a like, hit that subscribe button, and I'll talk with you next time right here on Sixers Digest.